Oh my God, I'm going to die here. I thought as I was tossed from side to side like a rag doll. I swallowed salt water and felt my lungs burning. Everything turned dark. Suddenly, I found myself in a place of absolute peace. Welcome back, I heard familiar voices say. The story you're about to hear is a true account. The names of characters and places have been changed to preserve the privacy of its authors. If you believe in miracles or have experienced one, leave your opinion in the comments and subscribe. I'll never forget that night. The sea was fierce, as if it wanted to swallow us whole. I, Dave, the chief engineer of the research vessel Aloha, found myself in a situation I never would have imagined. Dave, we need you to lead the team in the Zodiac, the captain shouted over the roar of the wind. I looked at the dark and threatening sky. Black clouds swirled above us like a bad omen. Are you sure, Captain? Those waves look like mountains. We don't have a choice, he replied. You're the only one who knows the port well. They need to reach land before it gets worse. I swallowed hard. I knew it was a suicide mission, but I also knew someone had to do it. We put on our life jackets, so old and dirty that we had to shake them to remove the accumulated dust. Let's go, boys. I shouted to my small team as we climbed into the Zodiac. Keep your eyes on the lighthouse. We began to navigate, fighting against waves 9 meters high. The sky was so black we could barely see beyond our noses. We only had the intermittent light of the lighthouse as our guide. Dave, I can't see anything, shouted one of my companions, panic evident in his voice. Stay calm, I replied, trying to maintain composure. Keep rowing. Suddenly, a monstrous wave rose before us. It was like a wall of black water, ready to crush us. Oh my God! I managed to shout before it hit us. The impact was brutal. It felt as if a giant had slapped us. The Zodiac folded in half as if it were made of paper. I was thrown into the air, feeling for a moment that I was flying. Then, the cold. A cold that chilled me to the bones when I plunged into the dark and turbulent water. I tried to swim, but it was as if the ocean had hands that dragged me down. Help! I shouted, but my voice was lost in the roar of the waves. I fought with all my strength, but every time I tried to surface, another wave pushed me down. It was like being in a giant washing machine, being hit and tossed around without control. I can't take it anymore, I thought, feeling my lungs burning from lack of air. At that moment, I had a strange clarity. I thought about my life, about all the things I hadn't done, about the people I loved. I'm sorry, I murmured mentally. Finally, I couldn't resist anymore. I opened my mouth and inhaled salt water. The burning in my throat and lungs was unbearable. Everything turned black. The last thing I remember thinking was, this is how it all ends. But I was wrong. It wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something that would change my life forever. When everything turned black, I thought that was the end. But suddenly, the darkness dissipated and I found myself in a place I cannot describe with earthly words. It was as if I had awakened from a deep sleep, but more real than any reality I had experienced before. The first thing I noticed was the peace, an absolute and enveloping peace that I had never felt before. All my fears, worries, and the panic I had experienced moments before vanished as if they had never existed. Where am I? I wondered, but not with fear, rather with a quiet curiosity. That's when I saw it. A light, small at first, like a distant star. But as I looked at it, it grew and came closer. Or maybe I was getting closer to it. It was hard to tell in that space without limits or directions. The light was brighter than anything I had ever seen, but it didn't hurt my eyes. On the contrary, it attracted me, called to me. I felt an irresistible urge to approach it. As I got closer, I noticed that the light wasn't a single entity, but millions of luminous fragments, all dancing and moving in perfect harmony. It was like watching a cosmic ballet, each fragment of light moving with purpose, as if they were all part of a great universal symphony. It's beautiful, I thought, amazed by the spectacle. And then I felt it. Love. But not the kind of love I had experienced on Earth. This was pure, unconditional, overwhelming love. It enveloped me like a warm blanket, filling every fiber of my being. It was as if, For the first time in my life, I was experiencing love in its purest and truest form. "Welcome back," I heard. They weren't voices in the traditional sense, but rather thoughts that I could understand clearly. I looked around and saw luminous figures approaching. They had no definite physical form, but somehow, I recognized them. They were familiar, but not in the earthly sense. They were my spiritual family, beings I had known before, somewhere beyond time and space. "Who are you?" I asked, though deep down I already knew. "We are your guides, your eternal family," they responded. "We have been with you always, though you couldn't see us." I felt overwhelmed by a sense of belonging that I had never experienced on Earth. It was as if, after a long journey, I had finally come home. "We have much to show you," they said, and suddenly, I was enveloped in a kind of movie of my life. But this wasn't a simple memory. I was reliving every moment of my existence, not just from my perspective, but from everyone involved. I felt the impact of each of my actions, words, and even thoughts on others. I saw moments of kindness I had forgotten and felt the joy they had caused in others. But I also saw moments of selfishness or carelessness and felt the pain I had caused without realizing it. "Every action, every word, has an impact," my guides explained. "Everything is interconnected in the great tapestry of existence." The review of my life was intense and revealing. It showed me who I really was, without masks or pretenses. I saw my strengths and weaknesses, my triumphs and failures. But the most surprising thing was that, despite clearly seeing my mistakes, I felt no judgment or condemnation, only love and understanding. "We are all here to learn and grow," they told me. "Every experience, good or bad, is an opportunity for evolution." As I absorbed these profound truths, I felt my consciousness expanding. It was as if, for the first time, I was seeing the complete panorama of existence. I understood that we were much more than our physical bodies or our earthly lives. We were eternal beings, on a journey of discovery and growth. In this state of expanded consciousness, I felt a deep connection with everything that existed. I no longer saw myself as a separate being, but as an integral part of a cosmic whole. It was a sensation of unity that defied all description. "This is what we really are," I thought, marveled by the revelation. But my journey wasn't over. My guides took me deeper into the light, and I felt myself approaching something even greater, more powerful. A presence that emanated infinite love and wisdom. I didn't know that soon I would face a decision that would change the course of my existence. A decision that would make me question everything I thought I knew about life, death, and the purpose of our existence. As I ventured deeper into the light, I felt an overwhelming presence. It was as if all the love, all the wisdom, and all the power of the universe were concentrated in a single point. I couldn't see it with my eyes, but I felt it with every fiber of my being. I knew, without a doubt, that I was in the presence of something divine, something humans have called God. Suddenly, a voice resonated through my entire being. It wasn't a voice in the traditional sense, but rather a thought so powerful it seemed to make the very essence of reality vibrate. "This is not your time. You must return." The voice was both gentle and firm, full of love but also authority. It was as if each word contained entire universes of meaning. At that moment, I felt a mix of emotions I had never experienced before. On one hand, I was overwhelmed by the beauty and peace of this place, by the unconditional love that surrounded me. On the other hand, the words of the divine voice filled me with confusion and, I must admit, fear. Return? I thought. Return to what? To that broken body in the ocean? To that life full of struggles and pain? I gathered all my courage and, for the first time in my existence, I dared to question God. "No," I said, surprised by my own audacity. "I don't want to go back. Here I have a family that loves me unconditionally. Here there is peace. Why should I return to a world of suffering?" I waited, fearing my defiance might provoke anger or punishment, but instead, I felt an even deeper wave of understanding and love. The voice responded with infinite patience. "You have a purpose to fulfill." That word, purpose, resonated through my being like cosmic thunder. In that state of expanded consciousness, I understood its meaning in a way that goes beyond human words. I saw, in an instant, the interconnection of all things, how each life, each action, each thought has an impact on the great tapestry of existence. I saw fragments of my future, moments where my presence would make a difference in others' lives. I saw the lives I would touch, the souls I would help elevate. I saw the unique role I was destined to play in the great cosmic plan. But why me? I asked, still resisting. There are so many others more capable, wiser, stronger. The voice responded with a tenderness that moved me to my core. Each soul is unique and irreplaceable. Your experience, your struggles, your triumphs, all of this has prepared you for this purpose. No one else can fulfill it like you. I felt the weight of those words, the responsibility they carried. But I also felt a strength and determination I had never known before. What if I fail? I asked, expressing my last fear. The answer came with absolute certainty. Divine love never fails. And that love is always with you. At that moment, I understood that returning wasn't a defeat or punishment. It was an opportunity, a gift, a chance to live with new purpose, with a deeper understanding of life and love. All right, I finally said, feeling a mixture of sadness for leaving this place of peace and excitement for what was to come. I'll return. I felt a wave of approval and love from the divine presence. And then, the final words that would change the course of my life forever. Remember, you are always connected to this source of love. Though you cannot see it with your earthly eyes, it is always with you. Carry this love to the world. With those words, I felt myself beginning to move away from the light. But it wasn't a total separation. It was as if a thread of golden light remained connected to my heart, a constant reminder of this experience and my purpose. As I prepared to return to my body and my earthly life, I carried with me a new understanding, a new mission. I was no longer the same man who had fallen into the ocean. I had been transformed by divine love and by the understanding of my purpose in the great cosmic plan. I knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy, that there would be challenges, doubts, and moments of darkness. But I also knew that I carried with me an inextinguishable light, a divine purpose that would guide me in the most difficult moments. The return to my body was like falling from a great height. Suddenly, the peace and light were replaced by the cold and turbulent reality of the ocean. I found myself again in the midst of the storm, fighting for my life. I opened my eyes and saw myself floating among the remains of the zodiac. The contrast between the peace I had just experienced and the chaos surrounding me was overwhelming. For a moment, I felt disoriented, as if I didn't know which reality I belonged to. Oh my God, I thought, how am I going to survive this? That's when I noticed something strange. Despite being in the middle of a fierce storm, I felt strangely calm. It was as if a part of me was still connected to that light I had experienced. I looked around and saw that the boat's rope had wrapped around my arm. At that moment, a huge wave lifted the remains of the zodiac, pulling me to the surface. The pain was intense when my shoulder dislocated, but that movement saved my life. Breathe, Dave. I ordered myself as I gasped, expelling salt water from my lungs. Coughing and spitting, I clung to the remains of the boat. Each wave threatened to submerge me again, but I refused to give up. The memory of my purpose, of the mission I had been entrusted with, gave me a strength I didn't know I had. I don't know how much time passed. It could have been minutes or hours. Time seemed to have become distorted. But then, through the darkness and rain, I saw a flash of light. Dave, Dave. I heard voices calling me. I tried to respond, but my throat was so irritated from the salt water that I could barely make a sound. However, I kept fighting, trying to stay visible. Finally, I saw my companions approaching. Their faces showed a mixture of relief and astonishment. My God, Dave, you're alive. One of them shouted as they grabbed me and pulled me onto their boat. Once safe, they wrapped me in blankets, trying to warm me up. I was shaking uncontrollably, a combination of cold and shock. Dave, how did you survive? Asked another of my companions, with eyes wide open. We searched for you for so long. No one can hold their breath that long. For a moment, I considered telling them everything. Tell them about the light, about unconditional love, about my encounter with the divine. But looking at their tired and frightened faces, I knew it wasn't the time. Neptune spat me back out. I said with a weak smile, trying to lighten the mood. My companions laughed nervously, probably more from relief than humor. I could see in their eyes that they knew something extraordinary had happened, but they didn't press further. The journey back to shore was arduous. We still had to fight against the waves and wind, but now there was a renewed determination in all of us. We had witnessed a miracle, even though not everyone fully understood what had happened. When we finally reached the beach, the relief was palpable, but my body was taking its toll. The pain in my dislocated shoulder was intense, and every movement was agony. "Dave, we need to fix that shoulder," said one of my companions, a former military man with first aid experience. I nodded, preparing myself for what was coming. Two of them held me while the third pulled my arm to put the shoulder back in place. The pain was blinding, but curiously, I felt grateful for it. It was a reminder that I was alive, that I had returned for a reason. As I lay on the sand, catching my breath after the painful procedure, I looked at the sky. The storm was subsiding, and I could see some stars peeking through the clouds. They reminded me of the fragments of light I had seen in my experience. "Thank you," I whispered, not sure if to my companions, to the universe, or to the divine presence I had encountered. At that moment, I felt a mix of overwhelming emotions, gratitude for being alive, all at what I had experienced, and a sense of responsibility for the purpose I had been entrusted with. While my companions took care of me and prepared for our return, I immersed myself in my thoughts. I knew my life would never be the same. I had experienced something that defied all rational explanation, something that would change the course of my existence forever. But I also knew it wouldn't be easy. How was I going to explain what had happened? How was I going to live with this knowledge, with this responsibility? As they took me to receive medical attention, I made a decision. For now, I would keep my experience to myself. I needed time to process it, to understand it completely before I could share it with others. "Dave, you're a walking miracle," said one of my companions as they helped me to my feet. "You have no idea," I thought to myself, feeling the weight of my experience and the long road ahead. The days and weeks following my near-death experience were a whirlwind of conflicting emotions and thoughts. On the outside, I tried to maintain an appearance of normalcy, but inside, I was waging a constant battle with myself. Every morning, upon waking up, I wondered if it had all been real. Had I really experienced that unconditional love, that absolute peace? Had I truly had an encounter with the divine? Doubt gnawed at me, but at the same time, I knew in the depths of my being that what I had lived was more real than anything I had experienced before. How can I continue with my normal life after something like this? I wondered as I prepared for work. The contrast between my transcendental experience and daily routine was disconcerting. I felt like a stranger in my own life, as if I were playing the role of Dave, the engineer, rather than actually being him. I tried to talk to some close friends about what I had experienced, but their reactions varied between disbelief and concern for my mental health. "Dave, maybe you should see a psychologist," a friend suggested with genuine concern. "You almost drowned. It's normal for your mind to have created some kind of fantasy to deal with the trauma." Their words, though well-intentioned, hurt me. How could I explain to them that what I had experienced wasn't a fantasy, but the deepest reality I had ever known? I decided to keep quiet about my experience. I kept it in the deepest part of my being, like a precious but dangerous treasure. However, two questions continued to torment me day and night. What was my purpose? And how could I find that unconditional love on earth? The search for answers led me down a path of spiritual exploration. I began to read voraciously about near-death experiences, spiritual philosophies, and religions from around the world. Each book, each teaching, seemed to contain fragments of truth, echoes of what I had experienced. I immersed myself in meditation, seeking to reconnect with that peace and love I had felt. Sometimes, in the quietest moments, I could feel an echo of that divine connection, like a distant whisper. But it was never as intense, as complete as what I had experienced. Why did you show me all that if I can't fully experience it again? I found myself asking in my moments of frustration. The search for purpose was equally challenging. Each day I wondered if I was doing the right thing, if I was fulfilling the mission I had been entrusted with. Every decision, every interaction, became charged with meaning. Is this part of my purpose? I constantly asked myself, am I doing enough? The pressure I put on myself was immense. I felt that every moment of my life should be dedicated to fulfilling that divine purpose, although I wasn't sure exactly what it was. This internal struggle began to affect my relationships. My family and friends noticed that something had changed in me, but they couldn't understand what. I became more introspective, more distant in some aspects, but also more compassionate and attentive in others. "Dave, what's wrong with you?" my sister asked me one day. "It's as if part of you were absent." I didn't know what to tell her. How could I explain that a part of me had stayed in that light, in that unconditional love? Months passed, and although the intensity of my internal struggle diminished, it never completely disappeared. I learned to live with it, to integrate it into my daily life. I began to see my experience not as a burden, but as a gift, an opportunity to live a more conscious and meaningful life. Little by little, I found ways to incorporate what I had learned into my everyday life. I began to practice gratitude consciously, to try to see the divine in every person I met, to seek opportunities to serve and help others. Perhaps, I thought one day, purpose isn't something you achieve, but something you live day by day. This realization was liberating. It allowed me to stop fighting against myself and start flowing with life, trusting that, somehow, I was fulfilling my purpose simply by living with consciousness and love. However, the longing for that unconditional love never completely abandoned me. There were times when the contrast between that transcendental experience and everyday reality overwhelmed me. Will I ever feel that complete love again? I wondered in my most vulnerable moments. But with time, I learned to find glimpses of that love in the most unexpected places. In a stranger's smile, in the beauty of a sunrise, in the embrace of a loved one. My near-death experience had fundamentally changed my perception of reality. I could no longer see the world in the same way. Every interaction, every moment, was imbued with deeper meaning. Life is a constant miracle. I often found myself thinking, we just have to open our eyes to see it. Thus, day by day, struggle after struggle, I learned to live in this world with the knowledge of another. It wasn't easy, and there were many moments of doubt and despair. But there were also moments of profound joy and understanding. My near-death experience wasn't the end of my journey, but the beginning of a new one. A journey of self-discovery, of searching for meaning, and of learning to live with one foot in this world and another in the transcendental. As the years passed, the internal struggle I had experienced after my encounter with the divine evolved. It was no longer a constant battle, but rather a delicate dance between the earthly and the spiritual. I had learned to live in both worlds, finding a balance that allowed me to honor my transcendental experience while navigating the complexities of everyday life. One day, while walking through a park near my house, I had an epiphany. I observed the people around me. Children playing, elderly couples sitting on benches, young people exercising. Suddenly, I saw clearly that each of them was a unique manifestation of the divine love I had experienced. We are all fragments of that light, I thought, feeling a wave of emotion course through my body. It was at that moment when I truly understood my purpose. It wasn't about a great heroic mission or changing the world overnight. My purpose was much more subtle and, at the same time, infinitely deeper. To be a conduit for that unconditional love I had experienced. With this new understanding, I began to transform my life in ways I never would have imagined. I left my job as an engineer and dedicated myself to studying psychology and counseling. I wanted to have the tools to help others connect with their own inner divinity, to find purpose and meaning in their lives. Each person I help is an opportunity to share a fragment of that divine love, I told myself as I began this new stage of my life. It wasn't an easy path. There were moments of doubt, financial fear, questioning. But every time I felt lost, I closed my eyes and remembered the light, the unconditional love I had experienced. That gave me the strength to keep going. As I progressed in my new career, I began to notice subtle but profound changes in myself and those around me. People seemed naturally drawn to me, as if they could perceive that divine connection I carried within. "Dave, there's something about you that makes me feel at peace," a client once told me after a particularly intense session. "It's as if you could see directly into my soul." Comments like this reminded me that I was on the right path, that I was fulfilling my purpose in a way I never would have imagined. Over time, I began giving talks and workshops about near-death experiences and spirituality. At first, I felt nervous about sharing my story publicly, fearing skepticism and judgment from others. But to my surprise, my words resonated deeply with many people. "Your experience has given me hope," a woman told me after a talk, with tears in her eyes. "It has made me believe there is something beyond this life, that love truly is eternal." These interactions filled me with deep gratitude. I understood that by sharing my experience, I was helping others connect with their own spirituality to find comfort and meaning in their lives. However, not everyone was open to my message. There were those who labeled me crazy or a charlatan. I received criticism and mockery, especially from those who clung to a purely materialistic view of the world. "How can you believe in such nonsense?" a skeptical colleague once asked me. "Everything has a scientific explanation. Your brain simply created a hallucination to protect you from the trauma of almost drowning." In the past, comments like this would have made me doubt. But now, with my new understanding and purpose, I could respond with compassion and openness. "I respect your point of view," I replied. "But my experience was real for me, and it has transformed my life in ways that I can't explain with science alone. Perhaps there is more to this universe than we can understand with our limited minds." This new confidence in myself and my experience allowed me to navigate the turbulent waters of controversy and skepticism without losing my center. As the years passed, my work expanded. I began collaborating with hospitals, helping terminal patients and their families find peace and acceptance in the face of death. I also worked with people who had had their own near-death experiences, helping them integrate those experiences into their daily lives. "You're like a bridge," a colleague once told me. "A bridge between this world and the beyond." That description resonated deeply with me. Yes, I was a bridge. A bridge between the physical and the spiritual, between the known and the unknown. And each day, I strive to strengthen that bridge, to make it more accessible to everyone. Looking back, I marveled at how my life had changed. From being a pragmatic and skeptical engineer, I had become a beacon of hope and spirituality for many. But most importantly, I had found an inner peace that I had never known before. That near-death experience, which at the time had seemed like the end of everything, turned out to be the beginning of a life full of purpose and meaning. I had learned that death was not something to fear, but a transition, another step in our eternal journey. Life is a precious gift, I often thought, and each day is an opportunity to share the divine love we all carry within. Thus, with gratitude and awe, I continued my path, always conscious of the light I had seen, of the love I had felt, and of the purpose that guided me. And although I knew that one day I would return to that light, for now, my mission was here on earth, being a bridge, a beacon, a living reminder that there is something beyond what we can see and touch. My transformation was complete, but my journey continued. And with each person I helped, with each life I touched, I felt that I was fulfilling the purpose that had been entrusted to me in that transcendental moment between life and death.